Well, the bottom line facing law enforcement today in the world that we live in is they're going to be second guessed on everything. So unfortunately, that leads to a situation, and I've seen it, I've even talked to some law enforcement officers, they're more inclined now to do nothing than to be proactive. And I can't blame them. If I was in their shoes, I'd be the same way. Because they realize no matter what they do, it's going to be analyzed and scrutinized to death and always put it in a negative light. So their best thing is you know what, we got to protect ourselves, so we're going to do nothing, which is a bad situation for the civilians and the public that they are sworn to protect. You got to understand, these people are our first line of defense to keep the scumbags away from our door. That's the thin blue line. And we don't want to tear them down, we want to prop them up. We want to let them know we appreciate what they're doing and we appreciate the efforts they're making on behalf of not only their families, our families. Yeah, there's bad cops out there, just like there's bad military personnel and there's bad civilians. And it's to constantly highlight negativity in the law enforcement sector is not good for anybody. You actually want these guys to have the confidence to know that you got their back. I think it's a very sad situation. And people need to be smart enough to know that the media is always going to put a negative slant on it because that's what draws attention. You got to be smarter than that. As far as law enforcement officers protecting themselves, you got to understand something. The training they get, just like the firearm they're carrying, you know, it's just as good as what you put into it. Garbage in, garbage out. I had the absolute best training that money can buy. I was in the most elite unit in the U.S. Army, and they spared no expense at all on our training and our ability to make life or death decisions in a fraction of a second. And it's extremely difficult. Unless somebody's actually been in those shoes, they are in no position to judge somebody else who's in that kind of a situation on a daily basis. Most law enforcement officers don't have a fraction of the training I did, and yet they're entrusted to be able to go out in the public and make those exact kind of decisions on a daily basis. So I have the utmost respect for them, and it's an extremely difficult job. Unless you've walked a mile in their shoes, you need to kind of chill with the comments. It's a very, very difficult job. They got to understand that proficiency with small arms and training is never ending, and it's like a life insurance policy. You can get a cheap life insurance policy, but you know what? It's only worth what you put into it, or you can get the best one you can. Good case in point company that I've kind of been hooked up with for a while now is CCW Safe. It was started by law enforcement officers, former law enforcement officers, and it was kind of put out there not only to protect the law-abiding civilian that carries concealed or protects themselves or their home with a firearm, but also they have the same coverage for law enforcement officers. For $75 a year, a cop can have coverage off duty, not just on duty, off duty. He can have coverage. No matter where he goes, if something goes sideways, CCW Safe will be there to cover their back. I want to wrap it up. I know I got a lot of my students are law enforcement officers. I got a lot of friends that are law enforcement officers. Just want to let them know right now is a tough time, and I know that. I support what they're doing. I appreciate the efforts they're putting in. Hey, they knew who bad cops are and good cops and whatnot. And obviously, like anything else, you got to weed the bad cops out and you got to reinforce and support the good cops. We understand that. My theory is go out and when you see a cop, let him know you appreciate what he's doing. His job is extremely stressful. They're underpaid. They're undertrained for what they're doing. And you know what? All you got to be is a guy like me who deployed overseas. And I went to some areas overseas that basically had no law and order at all. It was Mad Maxville. And I can tell you, the last thing we want in this country is a situation where we have no law enforcement or law enforcement that are not willing to do their job. That will be anarchy.